Longtime political analyst, Politico, if you will, in Mississippi. Sid Salter joins us right now. Sid, yesterday was such a unique day. It was not the first time ever. By the way, good morning to you. Thank you for your time. Always enjoy the visits.
Good morning.
It's not the first time ever that we've had an inauguration in the Capitol Rotunda. 1985, I think, was the last when, for Ronald Reagan's second term, the weather was such that they moved it inside. I certainly am not advocating for it being there permanently because it's such a for-the-people event to be able to go there and experience that. But I thought it was a really, I think intimate is the word that I used earlier. I thought it was a really nice setting for that event inside the nation's capital.
Well, unless you're one of the ones who prepared to
Sure.
And were invited to see it outside. And I saw a lot of exterior photos posted yesterday. And of course, the first thought was didn't make it inside. But I thought the ceremony was particularly moving and upbeat. And of course, I heard the senator talking with you about the fact that it was an inauguration of a president who seemed much more at ease with everything going on around him and much more calm and businesslike than 4 years ago. And I think that came across. I think there were a lot of images yesterday that will be iconic. I saw an inordinate amount of discussion about the First Lady's hat and things of that nature. But by and large, I thought it was an impressive inauguration and one that, we're in a divided country. People can't agree over the simplest things, and they go at each other on social media. But by and large, I saw far more moments of civility yesterday than division. And I think people paused and gave the office and what was happening yesterday an appropriate amount of decorum. And so that's a step in the right direction. The Marco Rubio getting confirmed unanimously was a step in the right direction. And so there were a lot of things that happened yesterday that, immediately went on the partisan razor blade and split the President Trump's pardons of the January 6th protesters, and probably more surprising and more honestly outside the norm were the Biden pardons of his immediate family. But what we've seen over the last 4 years, how personal and at times, pretty mean that, and you heard the term weaponization a great deal. I'm not sure that we should have been so surprised by either move. The president said that he would pardon those protesters, and he was as good as his word. Biden had already pardoned his son, and the additional pardons, while not particularly shocking, were, other than Ford's pardon of Nixon, outside of the norm. But all in all, I thought it was there was a lot of there in terms of people honoring the traditions of the transfer of power. Certainly, far more so than 4 years ago. So, all in all, I thought it was a great day. I'll pause a minute and take a personal note. I was also very sad yesterday at the loss of our friend Paul Gallo. I had a chance to get to know Paul personally during my time at SuperTalk, and I couldn't help but think yesterday about the bus. Steve and Kim, skinned the bus, and for a time, Paul and JT and I were, and boy, you talk about a scary thing to see at high speed on the highway, on the side of that bus. But, Paul was so kind to JT during his cancer battle, and certainly kind to me during mine. And of course, Paul was characteristically private about his own battle, but he fought hard. He was very dignified in that battle, and he tried as hard as he could for as long as he could to stay in touch with his audience, which is what I think mattered to him most. And Paul, for many years was one of the most influential, if not the most influential, person in retail politics in Mississippi, and he'll be missed. But I think the show is going to be in good shape with you, and I look forward to seeing you carry on Paul's legacy. But a real loss, personally and professionally. I didn't always agree with Paul, nor he with me, but I always knew that Paul cared about the state of Mississippi and the people who live here, and so I'll miss him.
Two things that I might add to what you just said. He was surrounded by his family at his passing, and sometimes it's in times of extended illness that we see the beauty of a long marriage and a long life together. And Patsy being there by his side for 55 years, they were so very close. I know this was hard for her, but the way she cared for him in his final days was certainly a beautiful thing. And you mentioned the influence. I'll never forget this, and this is maybe even a silly anecdote. Years ago, my father-in-law received an award. He worked for the Farm Service Agency for a long time from Delta Council. And, they had, you can put questions up on a video screen, and they give audience members clickers where you can see the answers to questions in real time. It's like polling the audience. I know you're familiar with with that process. And there was a question that was on the board. It's like, who is the most influential newsmaker or talker or whatever? And there were several different options, and Paul Gallo's name was on that. And that was the first time that it struck me just how big his voice was across the state, whether it was in the Mississippi legislature or with farmers or on the coast with, port workers and shipbuilding. He touched the entire state of Mississippi.
Well, he did, and it reminds me of an old tale. A guy started a spike newspaper in a small town, and the established paper was aghast that here was this challenger, and the challenger told the public, I got a different kind of paper. It'll cost you $1 to get your name in and $2 to keep it out. And so, Paul's show, whether you liked him or loathed him, Paul was one of those guys that you'd pay $2 to keep it out. So he had a marvelous presence. He didn't take himself too seriously, but he took the job he was doing very, very seriously, and great loss.
Do you have time to hang with us on the other side of the break just for a few more minutes?
Sure.
Okay. One more thing before we go to the break. Only about a minute left to answer this, which maybe is not enough time. You've covered politics at the state level, at the national level for a long time. There is a stark difference between campaigning for an office and actually governing. Donald Trump is one of the most gifted campaigners in terms of commanding an audience and having the stamina to go on and on and on. Governing, though, is different. What is this period of governing over the next 4 years going to look like for the president?
Well, number one, he comes to it with experience this time, and he knows more about what he's doing rather than what he was talking about doing in the 16 race. And so I think you're going to see a more effective president. Is it going to immediately cure the division in the country? No, but he's going to be more effective, and he's better armed for battle, I would say, this time around.
Certainly going to be interesting to see. There was a plethora of executive orders, but they were done differently than they have been done in the past. We'll talk about transparency when we come back with Sid Salter, political analyst here in the state of Mississippi. He has been an observer and has had a front row seat to a lot of presidential inaugurations. We'll talk more about yesterday and what's coming forward when we continue on the Gallo Radio Show right here on SuperTalk Mississippi with Sid Salter. Back with you, final segment of the 7 o'clock hour on the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. Thank you for being with us on this Tuesday morning, the 21st of January, finishing up our conversation with Sid Salter, longtime political analyst in the state of Mississippi, but has also spent many years covering national politics as well. We saw Sid yesterday a bunch of executive orders signed by the President of the United States. Some of those happened at the, we'll call it the parade that happened inside Capitol One Arena. They moved it indoors because of the weather as well. I was struck by the transparency, and I don't know that we've seen the pictures of a president signing orders in the Oval Office, sometimes even on Inauguration Day. But in terms of the number of executive orders and the transparency with which that happened, in some ways that felt refreshing to me. Like this was right out on the front porch for everybody to see. President Trump said, this is what we're going to do, and then he did it, and he did it on day one. How were you struck by the signing of those executive orders and doing it in such a transparent light yesterday?
Well, it was a smart presentation of the message that I think the administration was trying to deliver, and that is, on day one we did exactly what we said we would do in terms of many of these issues. And that is transparent. What is perhaps less so is we don't know what those executive orders say. We know at a 35,000 foot level, but in executive orders and in the writing of laws in Congress, the devil's in the details. So as these executive orders are made public and analyzed, both sides, the President Trump supporters and his opponents across the aisle, will have a chance to pick those apart. But I think, again, we talked about a day of images and things in reality that are as inconsequential as the First Lady's hat. These executive orders being signed in front of the people as a top priority was a message he wanted to convey, and it's an effective message. Finding out what they say and how far they go on some of these issues will be what we spend the next couple of days doing.
And in some cases, lawsuits already have been filed. I think the ACLU has already filed a lawsuit against the birthright citizenship executive order. And that actually brings up a really interesting thing to me, in that there are certain things that the Constitution allows for or does not allow for, and you don't just get to, with the stroke of a pen, change an executive order. How significant are some of these fights going to be about the constitutionality of some of these things that were signed yesterday?
Well, I don't think there's a great deal of disagreement over the fact that it will take more than an executive order to change birthright citizenship. I think it's important to the president and his advisors to be able to say with credibility, I did in office or attempted to do in office what I promised I would do on the campaign trail. So from that standpoint, it's a win. But, when you're talking about changing constitutional rights, that I don't believe can be done by executive order. So I think a lot of these are going to be litigated. You made the point, ACLU had a lawsuit filed on that before they read a word of the order. And
right.
So you're going to have that sort of knee-jerk opposition. And that's how the sausage is made often. But I do think you're going to see a lot of legal challenges, and I think even in Congress and even among some of his own Republican supporters, there'll be questions about how the president is going about bringing the change that he's is working for. But you also go back to the fact this was a very tight election, and it was very hotly contested. And at the end of the day, the people voted for that change, and they voted for this president to be the person who leads that change. So, the most staunch Democrat in Congress would have a hard time with a straight face saying that the majority of the American people did not express their desire to put Donald Trump in the White House and put the Republican Party in charge of the House, the Senate, and the White House. And so I think that may be one difference. Trump won in 2016, but this victory in this election was much more emphatic. And so I think you're going to see Democrats, as they can, trying harder to work with the president when they can. I think Rubio is a fairly popular senator,
sure,
well-liked, but it was a chance for Democrats to reach across the aisle. I think they'll be looking for more opportunities when they can, but I think they're going to hold their ground on other more substantive issues.
We shall see. Thank you, Sid.
Take care.